another great golf tip podcast brought to you by Infuzion Magazine.
Hi, I'm Mike Bury with Infuzion Magazine. This is the second video, if you like, for my article in the June issue of Infuzion Magazine. The title is How to Video and Analyze Your Swing. There's a previous video that talked about how to video your swing from the face-on view, and this is really how to analyze your swing from the face-on view. Last month we looked at how to video and analyze your swing from the target line view. This is the view of the face-on, which is when the camera is positioned at the 90-degree angle to the target line or perpendicular to the target line. So what we've got here on the screen now is a picture of the setup, and we've got a good setup on the left and we've got a not so good setup on the right. In terms of the setup on the left, first thing I've done is I've put a couple of lines on the screen. You can see here I've got a blue box around my head, and then I've got a couple of yellow lines along the side of my body here on the side of my legs. I created those just by drawing lines basically from my hips down to the outside of my shoes on both sides of my legs. I'm going to use those lines as reference points throughout the swing. So you can put those on there to start with, and then you can just leave them there. And these lines are not lines that you need to stay within. They're actually just purely for reference points. We're going to move a little bit outside of all of these lines throughout the swing, and we're going to use them to see how the body's moving as opposed to staying within them. The one little line I put extra on this particular part of the swing here is the line from my shirt buttons or my sternum down to my belt buckle. You can see that this line the top of the line is leaning away from the target, and this is basically just showing that my spine tilt is leaning away from the target. Here you can see on the right hand screen, that would not be the ideal setup. You can see that my spine is leaning towards the target, and that's going to create some pivot issues during the swing. When we take the club away and we're now looking at sort of the first move away, if you like, and this is typically referred to as a one-piece takeaway. With the good image on the left, you can see that my arms, my shoulders, my hands, my club, they've all moved away together to this point to get the club here. On the right-hand screen, you can see that my shoulders really haven't moved at all, my arms haven't moved, but I've just used my wrist to take the club away. And what can often happen in this circumstance is that gets the club too much underneath the swing plane or too much to the inside on the takeaway. And it's also a disconnected takeaway. You've got the hands working independently of the body. When we take the club up to the three-quarter position, there's a couple of things you'll see here on the screen. You can see that one, let's start from the top down. We can look at my head and see that in relation to where it started, it has moved. It's moved away from the target. We don't want to move too far away. You can see that the middle or the little bobble on my cap is still inside of the box, but if it were outside of the box at this point, then we would have definitely moved too far off the ball. You can see that my right pocket, if you like, is connected to the yellow line. It's not through it, but it is connected, and that's really what I'm looking for at this point. One of the things I'm looking for, and on the left side of my hip there, I've created a little gap, maybe almost a tennis ball gap, if you like. So this is telling me that my weight is shifting into my right leg, and the right leg has really become the pivot point of the backswing. You can see that I've obviously got a pretty good amount of wrist hinge here, but the green lines here represent my shaft and my left arm. And we're not looking for a perfect 90-degree angle here. If you achieve a 90-degree angle, then great. But we're just looking for some amount of wrist hinge. On the right hand swing there, there's obviously no wrist hinge. You can see that both wrists are very flat there, and so that doesn't create the angle that we're looking for at that position. When we take it up to the top of the swing, you're going to see a lot of little black numbers with white, or black spots with white numbers in there, and they're all over the place. And I really put that on there because we're looking at a number of images here at the top of the swing. On the left-hand side of this image is obviously that's the ideal position. The others all have faults. So we'll start with point number 1. You can see that my right hip is connected to that back yellow line. That means, like I said, that right leg is the pivot point of the backswing. I've shifted my weight over to that leg. It hasn't gone through that yellow line, so my hips haven't slid through that line. But it certainly set me up in a big, powerful position there. Point number 2, you can see that gap that I've created between the front yellow line and my left hip. And when it comes to the downswing, we're going to squash that tennis ball gap, if you like, in terms of the sequence. That'll almost be the first thing that we do. But it's really good to have that there. If we look at the top of the swing, or the top of the golfer here, if you like, at point 3, that's really talking about the head. You can see that the head definitely has moved compared to where it started. It's moved away from the target. It hasn't moved up. It hasn't moved down, but it has moved away from the target, and that is fine. If more than half of my head were outside of the box at this point, then I would have certainly have moved too far off it. But a little bit of head movement is more than acceptable. It's actually desirable. If we look at the second golfer there, the second swing, if you like, we've got a couple of things going on here. If we look at point number 4, you can see that there is some daylight in between my hip and that yellow line. So my hips are a little too centered here. And that's really a result. You can see my body leaning towards the target, and that's obviously what point 5 is talking about, that's showing my body leaning towards. And we've got a bit of a reverse pivot going on here. That's going to create some issues on the downswing. My body's going to have to try and get back in the correct position, and that's going to make it challenging in terms of hitting the ball solid. So that's going to present some issues. You can also see that point 6 there, my head has moved forwards towards the target, which is definitely not what we're looking for. So this is a classic reverse pivot. We're going to have to make a number of compensations to try and get into the right position on the downswing. And the more compensations we have to do, the more we're going to rely on timing to hit the ball solid. And when we're trying to do that time and time again on the golf course, then that's the challenge, and that makes it very difficult to be consistent. Moving on to the third swing here, point number 8. What you'll see here is that my knee has actually slid outside of the line, so we've got some lower body slide going on here, and in this circumstance my weight would actually be on the outside of my right foot, and that's not what I'm looking for. I'm looking for my weight to stay to the inside and to the back heel of the right foot. So if your weight has slid to the outside part of that foot, there's some lower body slide going on here. While this is occurring, you can see at point 9 there that my hips have stayed somewhat central. Certainly my right hip is not connected to that to the back line, and that is obviously related to the sliding of the lower body. My hips are trying to keep the weight centered, if you like, so that I don't fall over. And point 10 here is obviously a big overswing. We can see the clubs going well past parallel. These are all things that you would want to avoid when it comes to the backswing. The final point here, the final golfer on the right-hand side, point number 11 there, you can see the head is moved well outside of that box, and obviously from there you're going to have a tough time hitting that ball solid. Chances are you're going to hit that fat or thin every time. And point 12 is demonstrating that there is too much tilt of the spine away from the goal, from the target there. So these are just some points that you'd want to look for. It's definitely not in depth. There are a lot of things to look at, but the best way that you can use the backswing analysis or any type of analysis is, like I said, in conjunction with an instructor. And there are going to be some parts of the swing that are going to require more of your attention than others. Certainly not every swing you make are you going to be evaluating your knee, your hip, your shoulder, your head, your club, your lag. If you were to do that, then you're going to go crazy. It's all about cause and effect. And making sure you're fixing the correct problem. There are a lot of things that you can get away with in the swing that are fine, but if in terms of improving it, you want to make sure you're addressing the right part. For those of you that are trying to evaluate your swing, if you can adhere to some of these points, then you're going to be on the road to putting yourself in a position where you can make a good downswing. I'm Mike Bury with Golf Infusion Magazine. I hope these tips have helped you with video and analysing your swing. Stay tuned at golfinfusion.com for more tips and more help.